Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, thank you so very much for being a listener to the Public Relations Review podcast. I would really appreciate your leaving a review of the podcast. Let me know what you think. To make it easy, you can go directly to the podcast website, and that is publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can go directly to the review page to leave your review. So let me know what you think of the podcast. And again, thank you so very, very much for being a listener.
Welcome to the multiple award-winning Public Relations Review podcast, ranked by Apple among the top 1% of podcasts worldwide. Each episode features distinguished American and international guests who explore a wide range of public relations topics, including AI, digital trends, crisis communications, storytelling, media relations, and more. Our conversations bring together seasoned professionals, business leaders, authors, academics, and government officials and others to share their insights and expertise. Now, here is your host and producer, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review podcast. I'm sorry I've been away for so long, but moving from Nashville to Washington, D.C. took up quite a bit of time. But I'm glad I have a chance to join you. Now, question to my listeners. Do you know what qualities are most important when clients begin searching for a public relations agency? How confident are you that your PR agency is using AI effectively and responsibly? These and other questions in a survey were presented to marketing leaders who have experience working with advertising and public relations agencies. And the results are quite an eye-opener. Now, joining me today is Jessica Howard. She's the Senior Vice President for Integrated Communications with the Dalton Agency in Nashville, Tennessee, and she's here to discuss this survey. First, Jessica, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Peter.
So, first of all, what was the motivation for your organization having this survey? And after that, let's look and examine the eye-opening results that came back. So, first of all, let's talk about why you decided to have this.
Sure. I think there's a lot of pressure on agencies these days. We've seen across the board marketing budgets get cut, which clearly affects agency partners many times. So we want to really better understand what are the pain points of our clients and how can we be better? You know, we pride ourselves on Dalton at having personal relationships, good relationships with our clients and asking for feedback. But sometimes because you do have a good relationship, they may be not as open about areas where we can improve. And so we wanted to see as a whole, as an industry, what's happening with budgets, what's happening with AI, how are companies choosing an agency to work with, what's the most important things to them, and then what can we do about that? You know, so it's one thing to have the data and to understand what the problems are, but then how can we think through how to improve? And so I do want to say we didn't survey our clients because some of these, I think you said they're eye-opening. Some of these results are eye-opening, but I think it's good for us to hold our own feet to the fire and get the truth and then figure out how we can be better partners.
So with that understanding, now let's take a look at the actual survey results. Why don't you, let's say, start at the beginning and let us know what it is you asked them and what response did you get back from those questions?
Sure. So I'll do kind of high level. We asked 5 questions. And one of the main things I was interested in seeing, you know, we're all always out there trying to get new business, is when you're looking to hire an agency, what are you looking for? What's the most important thing to you? And this probably won't surprise any of your listeners, but 40% of the marketing leaders said they prioritize agencies with a proven track record and measurable results. So we can talk about ROI in more detail later, but this really is something that's important, especially for PR professionals, because ROI is a tale as old as time, right? It's something that we're always trying to prove. So results were important, 40%. And then on the flip side of that, what they found most frustrating, we asked, you know, what do you find most frustrating with your agencies? And 49% said high cost and unclear ROI. So this isn't painting the best picture because you have something that is very important to your clients, and then they're saying that they're not actually seeing agencies deliver on that. Then we asked about AI because that's something that everyone's talking about now. I think especially for the PR industry, it's especially important. And more than 1/3 of marketing leaders said they were not confident in agency partners effectively or responsibly using AI. So we have some thoughts around that we can get into a little bit more detail. And then we also asked, what's the future of your partnership with agencies? Are you bringing work in-house? Are you expanding? Are you looking for an integrated agency, a boutique agency? And almost 45% of respondents said they expect to bring work in-house, and 31% plan to consolidate their agency rosters. So I think that's where we're seeing a lot of those budget cuts. Then the final thing we asked them was around budgets. So in the coming few years, are you planning on increasing your budgets for agencies? Are they going to stay the same, or are you going to cut them? And the majority of leaders said they expect agency budgets to remain the same or decrease. So, these findings probably don't sound super surprising, but it can feel a little bit daunting because they're not incredibly positive. But, there are definitely things that we can do and steps that we can take to build a more successful relationship. And I think, especially in PR, we are accustomed to change. Some people may say we thrive on it. So I really want to be careful about how we view these, not in such a negative light, but as just the relationships in the agency world with our marketing leaders, they're just evolving like everything else. And it's our job to stay on top of that and listen to what our clients are saying and then make sure we have solutions.
Well, why don't we, let's say, take a look at something that's very important is that the quality is most important to identify an agency. I mean, you've got a list of what they look for, and let's start at the top and go down to the bottom and take it from there.
Sure. So, I think the main thing that stuck out to me with this was ROI. And, as a PR professional over the past 20 years, there's a lot more pressure to have results and then be able to clearly communicate the value you're bringing to your client. And we see from the results that's something that as an industry, they're saying we're not doing a great job with. And that's very concerning because that's our livelihood, is showing what we deliver. And we know what PR can do, but I think sometimes we have a hard time communicating that. So I'll start from the beginning of thoughts on what I think we can do around ROI. And I know there's a lot of talk in the industry, probably a lot of your listeners may agree with the statement that impressions and AVE are outdated. I tend to agree somewhat with that. I think there's also a perception that some of these numbers are inflated, but I actually think that they undervalue our work if we're using just AVE and impressions as the value that we're bringing to the table. So, for example, at Dalton, we have a lot of B2B clients. Mm-hmm. So a placement in a trade publication, it's not going to have huge reach numbers, but you are reaching a highly targeted and a highly engaged audience. And then just as important as that value that we bring in PR that a lot of our sister disciplines don't exactly bring is that immediate authority. So, if you're featured by a respected industry journalist, it's essentially a third-party endorsement. And, that's an incredible value that the numbers don't tell that full story, right? So, it pains me to say this a little bit, but I don't think that clients are ready for us to abandon those traditional metrics, because the reality is that, most of us are working with a marketing team lead, and then they have to report up to a CEO or a CFO or a COO, someone who wants to see numbers, someone who's taking our dashboard and our numbers and putting it into a bigger dashboard, right? If we can't provide numbers, PR is at risk of getting left out of the conversation altogether. And let's be honest, someone else could take part of our budget, right? So I think the solution is twofold. We do need to track the traditional data, but we need to go beyond reach and ABE with additional data that can kind of tell that broader story. So we have to do that. We have to play within the box that we've been given. But I also think we need to educate our clients on the long-term value of PR. And if I could add a third, I know I said two, I would say let's harness this moment of resurgence that PR is having because of what AI is bringing to the table. So for instance, for tracking additional pieces of data, we'll show things like website traffic that's spiked because it's tied to coverage, things like that, time spent on a page, social sharing, share of voice, message pull through, the quality of the placement. We tier out our placements. Did you get in your target publication? Is it a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? Did you just have one quote, or was it an entire interview? Just pieces of data that can create a fuller picture. And then you have to balance that with the education that needs to happen early in the relationship with the client. You don't want to just say what you need to say to get the business. You need to be transparent about how you're going to show your value. And I think we need to say that we are a long-term reputation play, and that piece of value that we bring to the brand is important. And I think sometimes we think when we talk about long-term value, it may sound like an excuse because a lot of people don't think that way, but it's important. And I think we need to say it with our chest, like the value that we bring long-term to your reputation is important. So I think that's part of the education. And then you have to have the part of the education that goes beyond the placement. So great, we got an awesome media hit. We're showing you the numbers. We're showing you the value of it. We're talking about its long-term impact to your reputation, but it doesn't need to live just in that one incredible hit that we got. Mm-hmm. It needs to go on owned channels. It needs to go on social channels. Sometimes we forget about the sales team. The sales team loves credible third-party validation that they can share. So we just need to make sure it doesn't live and die with that one incredible hit, and that we're showing our value and amplifying it across all of our channels.
Let me just pick up on that because I'm looking here, and measurable results I think is important because, as you said, people like to see numbers, yes. But some things are difficult to actually quantify. If let's say you got a spot on maybe just on the radio, for instance, how many people heard that? I mean, how somewhat difficult one. I mean, drive time is one thing, and how many people are listening, something like that, or how many people responded to what they saw on your they saw online that you put there. Those kinds of things. So I think what you're measuring differs. All things aren't measured the same way. Whatever particular instrument you're using to get the information out, how are you measuring the results from that? And is that what they're looking for? Those kind of things, I think, have to be individualized, I would think.
I totally agree. And that's a very good point, Peter, is that, and I think that's that education up front when you're talking to your clients. What's important to them, as much as we can. Of course, we want to tie what we're doing in PR to their business goals. But what does success look like to them? What's important to the client? And then how do we tailor the numbers and the data that we're giving them to make sure that it makes sense for their business model, right? And there's a lot that we can do. It can't be cookie cutter. It has to be a collaboration and a conversation with your client. And the word transparent is overused all the time, but it has to be transparent. You have to say what these numbers are really telling you and also what they're not telling you, and then fill in the bigger story. I have anecdotally clients all the time, if we got a big media hit, especially once they shared or reshared across their social channels. Oh, I got 4 meeting requests from someone once they saw the incredible work that we're doing. We're careful not to call PR a lead gen machine, right? I want to be careful with that. Mm-hmm. But we do see that the calls or the meetings that happen afterwards or getting a new client. So I think we just have to be very collaborative in the way that we talk to our clients about it, and they have to give us feedback on what they're hearing on their end, because unless they're telling us, we're not going to know that they're getting that phone call or that LinkedIn request.
I certainly agree with you. Now, the other thing that came up was about the frustration that professionals face with agencies. What are some of the issues there? Because one of the things, one of the top ones, was the high cost and unclear return on investment. How do you address that?
I think it's along the same kind of lines, is that you have to be very clear up front. So this is what it's going to cost. This is how much time it's going to take us, and this is the value that we're going to see. And that has to come at the beginning. It can't come halfway through your relationship with your client. It can't come at a time when maybe they're not seeing the results that they want to see. You have to be very, very clear up front. And then you have to understand that what you set out in the beginning, especially if you're in a new relationship with a client, you could have had the best strategy possible. Everyone could be aligned, and it might still not work. And it could be something that you're doing internally that you need to address. It could be something you need to address with your client. Perhaps they're not giving you the information that you need, or it could be something that's going on within their industry, right? So I have a lot of healthcare clients, and the way that I'm doing PR for a lot of my healthcare clients this year is totally different than last year because the industry has changed and the sentiment has changed. So you have to be able to, yes, of course, you want a big strategy, you want a plan, and you want to agree on it, but you have to be able to pivot if you're seeing that something's not working, and you have to be honest about it, and you have to figure out the best plan to move forward. So, you don't want to dig your heels in just because you had a good strategy that everyone agrees with and not understand that things change. And that's part of the value that we bring in PR, is that deep understanding of the industry and what's going on and how those macro influences directly affect the client. So you have to be able to be quick on your feet.
Well, I certainly agree with it that, people, when you talk about a return on investment, what are the expectations of the client for whatever the project is? And what are considering the different tactics that they're using to achieve those goals? That something needs to be clear so that they can wrap their hands around it, and they too can begin to understand what the measurements will be from your activities to the results they're expecting.
Absolutely. And sometimes, this pains me to say, depending on what their business goals are, PR may not be the right thing for them in that specific moment. Mm-hmm. And you also have to be able to be honest and say that. We're an integrated agency, so it's a little easier for me. We were a PR only agency. That would be a very, very tough conversation to have. But I think it's important to look at their business as a whole and what they're trying to achieve. And if PR is not going to move the needle in the way that they're expecting, then you might need to pivot to another discipline.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing that comes up too is now how do you see agency relationships changing now over the next several years based on the information that you've gotten from the survey?
Well, that was the piece that was a little concerning in as far as, I think, what do we have? 45% are planning to bring more work in-house. 30% said they're consolidating to fewer agencies. And then we asked about project-based work versus retainer work. And 23% said they were planning on moving to more project-based work. So to me, this is more of a budget picture. And the next thing we asked them was actually about budget, which they said was either staying the same or they were decreasing. So I don't think it's necessarily overall dissatisfaction with the work that agencies are doing. I think it's a budget. I think it's a budget question. But, again, we have to work within the framework we've been given. And if we're going to have smaller budgets, and then if you put that together with the first thing we talked about with ROI, now we're really feeling the pressure, right? Mm-hmm. So we got to do more with less, and that's just what we have to do. But I think what clients are looking for, because, they are having to scale back either internally or with their partners, is that they need an actual partner. Because what we did find in the survey is that as an industry, we're doing the basics very well. We're being responsive. We're having good, creative, innovative ideas, things that were important to clients. We're doing some of the basics well. But I think what they really need is a thought partner, right? Because the marketing teams internally are getting cut, and they don't have as many people to lean on, and they have to show our value. So, we can't be order takers. We have to be true thought partners that bring value to them, and we need to be collaborative. Because if they start seeing us as a vendor and they're cutting their vendors, then we're going to get cut. And that's not where anyone wants to be. So we have to be that strategic thinker. We have to bring fresh, new ideas that maybe because they're so close to it, they can't zoom out and see how to position something, or a creative way to get a new media placement, and then how to get that media placement new live. So we can't be order takers. We got to be strategic partners.
Well, pardon me, what I also hear is that the more computer use, computer information, other things like that, different programs that you can engage in to help collect information or determine how people are thinking, what are they looking for, those kinds of things, outreach programs that people have, to partner with them, that they can see that you're using modern technology in a wide variety of ways to help them achieve whatever goals that they have set for you.
Right. And I think that kind of takes us to what we also asked about, which was AI usage. And we found that in our survey, they're not particularly thrilled with how agencies are using it or their understanding of it. And I took that as just a little bit of caution, not necessarily that companies are against agencies using tools. Because to your point, there's a lot of things that we can do to get more data, to pull our people out of an admin mindset and put them more as that strategic thought leader partner to make us more efficient. We have more time to be creative and think through things. And I don't think that even though the results seem a little bit negative, I don't think that companies are against it. I think that we just have to show that there's a human involved and that we're still coming up with ideas. We're still being strategic. But I think especially for PR, we're seeing that a lot of LLMs are pulling through earned coverage or non-paid. 90%, I believe, is non-paid. And the majority of that is earned. So, people are Googling things, but they're also going to ChatGPT, and we're seeing the fruits of our labor because they are prioritizing credible news sources. So it's just another way to show our value and to be able to say that, so X publication typically gets pulled through these LLM searches, and we know that we have those publications that we can find, and you were in said publication. So not only are you getting found on Google, you're getting found the way that a lot of people are now searching. So, you just have to balance that with the fact that there's obviously, you don't want to use AI to write if I see another AI written social post or PR pitch, I'm sure journalists are very tired of seeing AI written. Actually, I've seen the data. They are very tired of it because everyone just looks the same. So we got to figure out how to harness it without losing, our craft and who we are. And people they're hip to it. They know when you're using AI. So we actually have a VP of AI at our agency, and he's making sure that we stay on top of things. He's also programming some proprietary pieces for us, but then he's also making sure that we have guidelines and guardrails and that we're very open with our clients for how we're using AI. They shouldn't have to be guessing. That's when they get suspicious, right? Like, we have to be completely transparent with what we're doing. And then we also have to make sure we're following their guidelines. I have some clients that in our contract says we can't use AI at all. So everyone needs to be aware of if an agency doesn't have their own guidelines, they certainly need to get them. And then we have to be aware of what our clients expect from us. And then we just have to tell them. Mm-hmm. We just have to tell them what we're doing. I think that sometimes we overcomplicate some of this.
Well, let me just say this. I certainly use AI for writing some things for me. But what I do is once I get it, I read it. And I said, does this sound like me? And then I'll make the changes that I think that I would make or how I would say things. But what it does is just speeds up the process for me, but I don't accept whatever's given to me and move forward. I want to read it and make sure I feel comfortable that the folks can, not that they want to determine that it is AI or not, they don't look at the content and am I saying what I mean to say through this particular vehicle.
Right. And I think too, when people are relying too heavily on it, we all use it. I think it's a great tool. But then you get this sea of sameness. Everyone's language sounds the same. And, we're writing bylines, even pieces of own content, things like that for CEOs. And I don't want someone that I'm representing to sound like everybody else. Mm-hmm. That takes away from the brand recognition and building their executive profile. So, there's definitely a danger of leaning too much into it because then no one's differentiated, which is the whole point of what we're doing.
Well, I certainly agree with you. And, I just was excited when you brought this survey to me because I don't recall having seen something like this before. And I certainly know we hadn't had it on the program. So I was very, very pleased that, we were able to get together on this. And I'm just wondering.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, that's what we're here for. We're here to give information to our listeners that perhaps they hadn't heard before or that they can actually use in their daily work. And I think something like this is going to be very, very valuable. But let me ask you now, do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to make that you think our listeners need to know about?
I think that it just goes back to the fact of evolving and being comfortable with change. So, I feel like one major thing that an agency can bring to a company, to a client, is that we're on the cutting edge of what's going on. That's part of our job. That may not, our clients may not have time to be completely up on everything and what's changing in the industry or even what's changing in their industry, but that's why they have us as a partner. And so when we see some of these results that may seem like they're a little bit negative, I don't think that's the case. It's just that these relationships are evolving. The world is changing. This is what happens. And we just have to stay on top of it. And we have to make sure that we're bringing value in a way that's important to our clients, not how we see value, not what we think ROI is, but what's important to them. And that means we have to have an actual relationship with our client. We have to be collaborative. We have to talk to them. We have to understand what they want. And then we need to provide that. We need to bring counsel. Sometimes what they want is not what's best for their company, and we have to provide that counsel. But it starts with having a relationship where you can have these honest conversations. And if you don't have that, you're just going to be a vendor. And when we're talking about these budget cuts and they want to cut a vendor, you're going to get cut. So I think some of this, as much as we say things are evolving and changing, some of it is old school PR and making sure that you're listening to your clients and you have those relationships.
Well, Jessica, let me say thank you so very, very much for bringing this survey to us. We certainly appreciate it. And let me say my guest today was Jessica Howard. She's the Senior Vice President of Integrated Communications with the Dalton Agency in Nashville, Tennessee. And I certainly hope that you have gotten a bit of information and can benefit from the discussion we've had today. And I'd like to thank you for joining us and also join us for the next edition of the Public Relations Review Podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the Public Relations Review Podcast. We invite you to share this episode with your friends and colleagues, and we greatly appreciate your reviews and feedback, which help us improve and grow. The Public Relations Review Podcast is produced by Peter Woolfolk in the Washington, D.C. suburb of Silver Spring, Maryland. Thank you for listening, and please share this podcast with your colleagues.
Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, let me say thank you so much for being a listener. Now, I want to alert you to our shiny new podcast website located at podpage.com. However, you can go directly to the podcast site located at publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can contact me through email. You can leave a voice message. You can leave a review. You can read an episode blog and frequently learn about the podcast guests. You might also want to suggest podcast topic ideas or even suggest a guest. You can also let me know if you would like to receive our podcast listener logo that you can post on your social media. So I look forward to hearing from you about our new podcast website. Thank you so much for listening to the Public Relations Review Podcast, and have a great day.